mentioned about voluntary collective bargaining, voluntariness, and there is a very and I'll come back to that later on to talk about UK's situation about collective bargaining. But in any kind of system, government should provide, by the requirement of the convention, should put in place the various mechanisms that helps collective bargaining to progress. That is recognition of union, the procedures when there is a problem with negotiation because of employer refusal, or because then there is a deadlock in the negotiation. And if government is regarded as failing to comply with these conventions after it has been ratified, then constituents, unions, or the employers can make a complaint to the ILO. And then ILO, or one is complaint, another is reporting. And in both cases, ILO will examine the case and situation, and ILO will produce certain observations regarding the situation and produce recommendations. And in this regard, Mr. Lee mentioned that Hong Kong Union have made complaints to the ILO. I think it's not complaint. CTU submitted reports on the situation. It has not yet made a complaint. It has made a complaint
in 98.
Yeah,
to the Freedom Association. Yeah.
But recent cases, there's been reports to the regular reporting procedure, and in response to this, ILO's body has made a number of observations regarding the situation in Hong Kong, and it has requested the Hong Kong government to make available more information regarding the situation or to make some changes. That I think you can look at that later. There are documents available. So let's look at why there is law or there is not law regarding collective bargaining. There are a number of reasons. The lack of law itself regarding collective bargaining does not by itself indicate there is little development of collective bargaining. Case is Sweden. Sweden does not have very strict, very rigorous, very detailed regulation regarding collective bargaining. For a long time in UK, there has not been very detailed regulation regarding collective bargaining. But in Sweden and UK, you cannot say these countries does not have developed collective bargaining. They have very well developed collective bargaining, and that is because the partners in collective bargaining themselves have created rules to respect each other, rules of game for their negotiation. So when this breaks down, there may be need for collective rules. And in the case of UK, in one respect, although UK has been a typical case of voluntary collective bargaining, there has been, over the last 2 or 3 decades, 3 or 4 times revision of laws to provide for specific legal requirements for union recognition for collective bargaining. For example, in recent law, union may request for union recognition and to start collective bargaining. If there is a voluntary agreement between the union and employer about union recognition and collective bargaining, then they can set their own rules regarding collective bargaining itself. But if the employer refuses to recognize union, then the union can file for facilitation by a government body. Once that happens, then collective bargaining becomes compulsory on the part of the employer. So it's no longer voluntary. So this, you can see how the different laws regarding collective bargaining has developed. In some other countries, there are different levels of collective bargaining, some other sets of countries. Developing countries, for example, in the 70s, 80s, even now, in developing countries in Asia, there was very weak laws regarding collective bargaining. There are two reasons, basically, why there is weak laws regarding collective bargaining. One, the government does not like the idea of collective bargaining. Second, government thinks that it is the responsibility of the government to provide for working conditions. So what we have is very weak, in general, what we have will be very weak laws regarding collective bargaining, voluntary regulation. On the other hand, very strong laws regarding specific working conditions. But when so many of the developing countries have this kind of setting. But the problem is, in most of these countries, the strong protection regarding working conditions are only on paper. It does not happen in reality. And there's also then give rise to the efforts of unions to promote trade union rights and to collective bargaining rights. And this has brought about the different developments of labor law regarding collective bargaining. And one of the things you see in these countries is that there is idea of strong state. The state has to be strong. And state does not want to delegate its power, its responsibility to the bipartite. But this is part of a process. But market economy is such that there are a number of factors that makes this kind of approach not work. That is the complexities of market economy and also complexities of civil society. And another reason, another way, what happens when there is little protection or legal provisions for collective bargaining? Much of the negotiation is left to the individual negotiation. Professor Yao mentioned that the individuals in employment relationship cannot really be individual, but because of the different entity or character property of entity engaged in the negotiation. One is a company, one is individual employee. But nevertheless, in many countries where there is little development of collective bargaining, the relationship and regulation of employment is left to individuals. What is the key bargaining position of an employee in such a negotiation setting? That is quitting the job. If I quit the job, that will impact on the, if that is only possible if the labor market is very tight and the worker is able to get a job without too much difficulty. But if it's not the case, then that is not an option for workers. And also, if individual relationship becomes dominant, then it does not mean the government does not have goal. There is more work for the government, in fact. This has been seen in many countries, where there has been a decline in collective bargaining, collective regulation of labor market and employment relationship through collective bargaining. Where there is decline in that, there has been an increase in the number of individual disputes. So the government has to provide, let's say this assumes the government is a good person, that is a good, well-meaning person, that is interested in ensuring the well-being of its citizens. If you assume the government is not such a person, that does not care about the well-being of its citizens, then government does not have to worry. But if a government is committed to the idea of providing the various mechanisms and procedures to ensure the well-being of its citizens, then it has to provide alternative services. And that is through labor courts, or tribunals, all those kind of processes. So you see in countries where the union has been in decline, there has been increase in individual disputes. This is UK and Japan. And also possibly China. So there is greater cost on the part of on the public side. Government has to provide, and there is another cost related to this situation. Will the workers be satisfied with the outcome achieved through these individual processes? Or will workers be frustrated and just, okay, I give up? And what does that do to the society? If workers in large numbers just say, oh, I give up, there's no way I can get full satisfaction. What it creates is a society that is not well functioning, a society that loses its overall purpose. Then also motivation about work. It will have negative impact on the labor productivity, on the development of labor market itself, or in terms of adapting effectively in a timely manner to the changes required for the labor market or for the enterprises. So there are costs involved. So collective bargaining, as you can see, is not about just rights. It's also about very much how to manage an economy, how to make the society. I think I'm really finished. So, about UK. UK is regarded as the typical case of voluntarism. But as I've mentioned, since mid-1970s, there has been a series of efforts to bring in laws regarding union recognition, promotion of collective bargaining. And in China, there has not been laws or regulations regarding collective bargaining until now, at the national level at least. So, this graph demonstrates my point about a decline in collective bargaining brings about increase in individual disputes. This is a graph about the number of individual disputes that are received by arbitration commission in UK. And you see there has been a decline. I think Hong Kong government had mentioned a number of times that I think I read somewhere that the permanent secretary of labor at the parliament mentioned that the, Hong Kong does not need so much collective bargaining, but need to have more effective individual relationship. So with regards to that, and also mentioned that why the reason for his belief was his understanding that union and collective bargaining coverage in other countries, especially in Europe, have declined. But this decline is true, which is very true. But this decline has brought about this phenomenon of increase in individual disputes. So the question is, from the point of view of the government, is it more beneficial to try to promote collective bargaining, to bring about that self-regulation among themselves, among bipartite partners, or to have a situation where individual disputes will increase? And I think I've checked recently the data from Hong Kong Labor Department, and in also Hong Kong there is also increase, trend decrease. Okay. Another thing about laws regarding UK situation is that when you bring laws regarding collective bargaining, it does not mean that law is protecting workers or law is in favor of trade union. The laws in UK concerning trade union rights, collective bargaining, have in fact been reducing of the rights of union. So it is possible. I'm not recommending, but the reality is that a government can approach a law in such a way that it guarantees the rights, but it makes it difficult, or it makes it narrow the application of law. But it's not accused of not providing for these exercises, this basic right. You know, I think it's about Chinese situation. There's been lots of strikes and also lots of group disputes, and there's been rapid increase in individual disputes over the last decade or more. And what has this brought about? This brought about similar kind of situation as in Hong Kong. The government in different provinces are busy running to strikes to provide mediation and facilitation service. Or there are also concerns that the public security, concerns about public security, and so police is going there. And also the workload of the various government institutions are becoming heavier and it's difficult. At the same time, you are seeing possibly some good developments because of that. There is activation, more active role of lawyers or other groups in society that provide support for the workers. And also there is more highlights about the role of trade unions, the ineffectiveness of trade unions, and some innovations regarding recognition of bargaining agent, different ways of bargaining agent, recognizing bargaining agent, and some initiatives for election of union officials or the inclusion of worker-elected bargaining representative within the overall bargaining process. So there are initiatives and experiments regarding development of working regulation. And this mostly is happening at province level, but there is a very good likelihood, I think, within short time, next few years, that there will be some kind of progress in development of regulation at the national level. I'll skip all that left, I think. So, in terms of conclusion for my presentation, just 1 minute. Collective bargaining is a response, right of collective bargaining and laws regarding collective bargaining is in some sense response to the demands of the workers to negotiate.